welcome to the deep dive. When you're building software or really any kind of complex project, it feels like things can fly off the rails pretty fast sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy for chaos to creep in.
Right. So today we're diving into something that's actually designed to stop that happening. It's called a quality management plan, or QMP.
Hmm.
Think of it like your project's immune system. It's supposed to be working away in the background, making sure that what you end up delivering is, well, what people actually need, and that it's built properly.
That's a really good way to put it, actually,
Mm.
an immune system. And for this deep dive, yeah, we've managed to get hold of some excerpts from a software project quality management plan template.
Ah, okay, a template.
Yeah, it's basically a structured guide,
Mhm.
a playbook, if you like. If you think about a successful project being like a well-run play, this template gives you the script, the stage directions, make sure everyone's kind of working together.
Avoids people bumping into each other on stage.
Exactly. Less tripping, more progress.
Okay, so our mission today then, pretty simple. Let's unpack the key bits of this QMP template. Let's figure out how they all fit together to hopefully lead to a project that actually works out well.
That's good, because the alternative.
Yeah, the alternative, that chaotic mess where the final product is just full of nasty surprises, nobody wants that.
Definitely not.
Okay, let's get into it then. At its absolute core, why does a project even need a QMP? What's the fundamental problem it's solving?
Well, the main reason, it really just boils down to making sure that everything the project produces, the software itself, sure, but also the manuals, the training stuff, all of it is good enough quality, and crucially, that it's fit for its actual purpose.
Fit for purpose. Okay.
Yeah, like imagine you buy some new tech gadget, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't do what the ad said, or it just conks out after a few days.
Yeah, been there.
Right. A QMP is meant to stop that kind of thing happening with software projects. It's all about building something reliable, something that actually meets what the users need and, what they expect.
Okay, so it's about delivering actual value, building trust.
Go ahead.
Now, this template, you said it breaks things down. What are the main sort of pillars or components we need to get our heads around?
Yeah, it highlights three main areas, and they're all connected. There's quality assurance that's mostly about getting the processes right from the beginning.
Okay, processes.
Then there's quality control. That's more about checking the actual things you produce, the outputs, against the standards you've set.
Checking results.
Exactly. And the third one is quality improvement, which is, looking back, reviewing, figuring out how to do things better next time. It's a continuous cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really important, the template stresses this, is that these aren't just things you tack on at the end. They're supposed to be woven into the whole project lifecycle, from the very first plan right through to deployment and beyond.
So it's not like a final inspection. It's baked in from the start.
Precisely. It's
Yeah.
part of the project's DNA.
Okay. Now, the template also talks about quality philosophy and quality strategy. They sound a little theoretical. Can you break down what they mean in practical terms?
Yeah, they can sound a bit abstract. Think of the quality philosophy as the project's core beliefs about quality. It sets the overall direction, the intentions.
The why.
Kind of, yeah. The template says this covers things like committing to using certain recognized standards or methods, setting up clear ways to make decisions, effective governance, and, this is important, getting input from subject matter experts, making sure the thing is actually useful in the real world.
Right, like a company saying customer satisfaction is our philosophy.
Exactly, that kind of thing. It's the underlying belief that drives the quality efforts.
Okay, so that's the philosophy, the why, and the quality strategy is the how we actually do it.
Spot on. The quality strategy is the practical application. It spells out the specific actions the project will take to handle quality issues, both in how the work gets done, the processes, and in the final product itself. So it identifies which standards are relevant. We'll probably talk more about standards. And it highlights the really critical activities in the work plan that just have to be done right to get a quality result.
Okay. So if the philosophy is, say, security is paramount,
Then the strategy might say, we will conduct penetration testing at stages X, Y, and Z using these specific tools and following this standard. It makes the philosophy actionable.
makes sense. And you mentioned standards. They seem to pop up a lot in this template. Standards for risk, records, web stuff, security. Why is nailing down and sticking to these standards so critical?
Well, think about a common project nightmare, maybe a data breach after launch.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Often you can trace that back to not properly following relevant security standards during development.
Yeah.
Standards are basically Established best practices, they're collections of guidelines that people have figured out over time actually work.
So you're not reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. You're building on collective experience. So by identifying which standards apply, maybe for risk management or data privacy or just making sure a website works properly and actually following them, you avoid a lot of common pitfalls.
Okay.
And the template also makes a good point. If those standards change during the project, you need to formally note that down, track it as an issue.
Mhm.
You can't just ignore it. You have to stay current.
Right. Need to be vigilant. Okay. So philosophy and strategy set the direction. Standards give you the guardrails. Then project quality assurance. That's about putting it all into practice day to day.
Yeah, project quality assurance is all about proactively building quality into the way you manage the project itself. The template talks about defining the specific quality management processes you'll use throughout.
So how you'll actually run things.
Right, like setting up an assembly line in a factory. You don't
Oh.
just check the car at the very end. You have checks built in at each stage of assembly to prevent defects.
Ah.
So QA is about saying, okay, for planning, we'll use this method. For coding, these standards. For testing, this approach. Because we know these ways of working tend to produce good results. It's about establishing a reliable system.
A reliable way of working. Okay.
Yeah.
But how do we, actually check if those processes are working, if the quality is actually good? That sounds like where quality review and evaluation comes in.
Absolutely. This is the feedback loop part. It's where you formally step back and assess how things are going, quality-wise. The template mentions bringing in project quality consultants sometimes for formal evaluations called project performance reviews.
Okay. Externalize, potentially.
Could be, but more generally, project evaluation and review means setting up regular checkpoints. Maybe at the end of each project phase, for instance. You sit down and examine how things went.
And what sort of things are you looking at in those reviews? What gets scrutinized?
A few key things. You'd compare how the project is actually doing against the quality targets you set way back at the start.
Okay. Reality check.
Definitely. You'd also look closely at the methods you used. Do they actually work well for creating the deliverables? You identify what went right, what went wrong, the lessons learned.
Learning points, yeah.
And crucially, you pinpoint specific areas where you could improve next time, or even for the rest of the current project. It's not just looking backward. It's about feeding those insights forward.
Right. Continuous improvement again. Now, projects, well, they rarely stick exactly to the original plan. Scope changes seem almost inevitable. How does the QMP deal with managing scope changes without letting quality suffer?
That's a huge one. Because you're right, scope creep is a classic project killer. Think about adding new features constantly without really thinking through the impact.
Yeah, you end up with a bloated, buggy mess.
Exactly. Lower quality. So the template emphasizes, first, planning for potential changes through risk analysis. Then, really carefully tracking any suggested changes as formal issues. Using an iterative approach can help manage changes within phases. And, critically, making sure any approved significant changes get reflected back into the main project business plan.
So everyone knows what the current plan is.
Right. It's about having a defined, controlled process. How is the change suggested? How do we assess its impact, especially on quality, budget, timeline? Who has the authority to approve it? It stops changes just sneaking in and undermining the quality goals.
Controlled evolution, not chaos. Okay, let's shift slightly to risk assessment and management. We usually think about project risks like, running out of time or money. How does this connect specifically to the quality of the software?
It's a really vital connection. The template is quite clear that risk management isn't just about time and cost. It's also about risks to quality and risks to achieving the actual business outcomes the project is supposed to deliver.
Ah, okay. So risks to quality.
Precisely. The key thing here is to proactively try and identify things that could threaten the quality. Maybe the development team doesn't have enough experience with a new technology they have to use.
Right, that's a risk.
Or maybe the testing environments aren't really adequate replicas of the live system. That's another risk. The QMP needs to document how the project will find these risks, assess how serious they are, and plan how to mitigate or manage them.
Yeah.
Ignoring these quality-specific risks is just asking for trouble later on.
So anticipate the quality problems, have a plan. Makes sense. Now, what about information management? The template mentions document management and record keeping. Feels a bit admin heavy. How does that help quality?
It might seem like admin, but honestly, it's crucial. Yeah, imagine trying to fix a bug in code written a year ago, but the design documents are missing or they're totally out of date.
Nightmare, yeah.
Clear, accurate, accessible information underpins everything, especially quality. So document management, as the template describes it, means having clear procedures for how key documents, like the main project business plan, get reviewed and formally signed off. It ensures everyone's working from the same page, literally.
Okay, shared understanding.
And record keeping is about following the rules, could be government regulations, internal policies for keeping project records, why decisions were made, what actions were taken. It provides an audit trail. Super valuable for understanding how things went and definitely for learning lessons. The template mentions needing clear protocols, even for registering official documents.
So it's like the project's memory and it keeps things accountable. Okay, let's turn now to the actual stuff the project produces, the software, the deliverables. Output quality control. How does the QMP make sure these meet the standard?
All right, this is where the rubber meets the road, where those abstract quality ideas get tested. Output quality control is all about defining very specific criteria and characteristics that the deliverables must have to be considered, well, good enough, acceptable, and fit for purpose. That phrase again.
Okay, specific criteria. And who decides these?
That's key. It's not done in a vacuum. The template stresses involving various stakeholders in defining these criteria.
Like who?
It lists several. The business owners, they're often funding it. They have the vision. Advisory groups may be bringing technical know-how. Reference groups ensuring different user perspectives are heard. Working groups focused on specific parts. Maybe even external consultants for specialist advice.
So a lot of different viewpoints.
Exactly. And this is a really important takeaway. The template says fitness for purpose isn't just about technical specs. It's judged against the combined needs, expectations, requirements, and critical success factors of all those stakeholders.
So quality is kind of a consensus defined by the people who matter to the project.
You could say that, yeah. It's a shared agreement on what good looks like for this specific project.
Okay, criteria agreed. How do we actually check if the outputs meet them? That sounds like output review procedures.
Precisely. This part of the plan details the process for testing and reviewing the outputs, who does the reviewing, when does it happen, what methods do they use.
Right.
And the template makes a good point. Testing isn't only for software code. You might need to review documentation or test training materials to make sure they meet their requirements too.
Ah, good point. Anything produced needs checking.
Yep. And it also stresses needing formal procedures for managing changes that come out of these reviews. So if a problem is found during testing, there's a clear process for reporting it, tracking it, and making sure it gets fixed properly.
A structured bug-fixing process, basically.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And the template also brings up progressive audits or appraisals.
Progressive audits, what are those about?
Think of them as, like, mini quality checks spread throughout the project, instead of one massive review right at the end.
Ah, okay. Catching things earlier.
That's the idea. Catch problems when they're smaller, cheaper, and easier to fix. The template suggests these ongoing checks should look at technical stuff, whether the project is complying with rules and standards, internal or external, and also tracking any advice given who got it when. It helps build quality in step by step.
Building it incrementally. Nice. Okay, what if, during the project, we realize we need to change the specifications for an output? The template mentions change control for that too.
Yeah, similar to scope changes, but focused specifically on the deliverables. If you need to modify the agreed specs for a piece of software or the document, it needs a formal process.
Not just changing it on the fly.
Definitely not. The template says you need a structured way to request the change, properly assess its impact on quality, cost, schedule, everything, and then a formal way to authorize it before anyone actually implements that change. Prevents chaos and keeps quality in focus.
Controlled adjustments. Okay, so we've built it, we've reviewed it, we've controlled changes. Finally, someone needs to formally accept the outputs, right? Output acceptance procedures.
Exactly. And acceptance isn't just a quick thumbs up. The template points out it usually includes accepting ongoing responsibility for managing those outputs moving forward.
Ah, taking ownership.
Right. It specifies the processes the business owners usually will use for that final review against the agreed quality criteria. And this formal agreement, this handover, is typically documented, often in something called a handover plan, which clearly states who's taking responsibility now.
Clear transfer of accountability. Got it. And just quickly, the template mentions appendices at the end. What sort of practical stuff goes in there?
Yeah, the appendices are usually where you stick the supporting tools and documents. The template gives examples like a change request log or rectification log for tracking bugs and fixes.
Okay, the logs.
Could also be standard forms or templates the project team should use to keep documentation consistent. Maybe links to relevant operational procedures or policies. It's a practical toolkit that helps execute the plan.
The tools to make it all happen on the ground.
Right. Well, looking back at everything we've covered, it's pretty clear that a solid quality management plan is much more than just a document. It's a whole framework.
It really is a comprehensive framework designed to give a software project the best chance of delivering real value, meeting those expectations we talked about.
Yeah, it's a very proactive, systematic way of thinking about quality, not just testing at the end, like you said, but focusing on the processes, the reviews, the continuous improvement all the way through.
Absolutely. Building quality in, not just inspecting for it later. That's the core idea.
So for you, the listener, we really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of what goes into a software project quality management plan and, maybe more importantly, why this kind of structured approach is so valuable for avoiding those project nightmares and actually delivering success.
And maybe here's a final thought to chew on. The principles we've talked about, that structured planning, the regular quality checks, focusing on improvement, they aren't just for software, are they? How could you maybe apply some of those ideas to other complex things you're working on, maybe even personal goals, to get, well, better, more reliable results? Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
CTS is a